Hi, my name is Dimpho Hlungwane. I am an alumni at Stellenbosch Business School. I was studying my MBA and I specialized in healthcare leadership. I think the most transformative part is understanding that leadership is internal, right? Leadership starts with you. Before I came into the MBA, I was looking at how do I better qualify myself? How do I make myself look pretty on the outside so that people can actually hire me and all of that? And upon arriving here, I realized that it's actually internal. If I don't actually focus on myself and do deep inner work, I might still leave the MBA still having had not solved the problem that I came here with. So it made me realize that leadership is internal and it's about how you lead yourself so that you can better lead others. I moved from being the fixer, I always call it the fixer, being the firefighter, to actually understanding systems. So before MBA, I was more about activities, actions, let's close the gap, let's fix this, let's fix that. And then the MBA made me realize that actually there's a system behind what we do on a daily basis, right? You focus on different departments, different functions in the business, but the MBA made me realize that this is one connected, intricate system. But if you look at it from that light, then you'll be able to know that when you move something, even in a department, even in your everyday operations, when you move something else shifts in the entire ecosystem of the business. And I think that's been one of the most amazing things that I've learned, because even when I have a problem, I don't rush into fixing the problem. I actually take a step back and go into what might be causing the problem and where is the problem affecting in the other areas. I think the frameworks, right? We come into MBA or into the industry knowing our jobs, knowing our work, knowing what we know. But for me, I didn't have the frameworks. One of the frameworks I'll make an example of is the value-based healthcare framework. I knew from my marketing perspective that we need to look at patients as a client and as a customer, but I didn't know that that whole system is called value-based healthcare. So I learned frameworks that make me understand when we speak of value to the patient, what does that mean? And that's more on my work side of things. From a personal side of things, my most favorite thing that I've learned was actually in leadership. This was right at the beginning of the MBA, and I was exposed to the Erickson stages of development. They kind of provided a pathway for me. Before, it's like my life was a series of different experiences all over. And then learning these frameworks have actually made me realize that my life has been a series of a developmental journey, and what the different areas of my life mean and who I am today based on the different things that I've come to put together. Yeah. So the program has made me become, I think, more attractive in the market. I now am able to integrate a couple of business functions, if not all of them: finance, operations, human resources, marketing. Therefore, my employability is no longer limited to one aspect of work, right? It's actually made me be able to open up my career portfolio and go into a career where I'm not only one thing, but I can be multiple things. So the journey is going into governance and trying to actually change things from where they're designed and not necessarily on the ground anymore. So it's given me the confidence to actually want to push to be in those kind of spaces, spaces where it's board members, board work, and not necessarily just things that are in operations only, right? So I now have the confidence to actually expose myself to spaces where initially I felt very small to be around. So I chose Stellenbosch Business School because when I initially was doing the research of which institution to go for, at the time, only 2 schools were offering healthcare leadership, and I was specifically going for that, not just the MBA, right? So Stellenbosch was one of the 2 schools, and when I looked at it, it provided culture, it provided history compared to the other school, which was more a newer school where I felt like they're still learning, they're still getting into the industry. And with what I was trying to achieve was more about learning the processes. So a school that already has history has kind of figured that part out. There's also something that we never speak about is your personal branding. You want to associate yourself with an institution that will actually ensure that it fast tracks your career rather than you just getting the qualification. So brand alignment between you as a personal brand and the university that you go for was very important for me. And then the next thing was that Stellenbosch was not focusing on executives that are already executives. They were focusing on people that are coming from mid-management that might not have the executive experience. But so when we were learning, they were taking you through all of that stage, you know. So there was a nice bridge between people that are executives and us that were probably not executives as yet. I got my promotion while I was on the MBA actually. So that was one of the highlights for me, is that you don't feel out of place even though you don't have a big title in your company already. They managed to manage us so well that you even forget that you are not high up. You know, we became people. You would actually be partnered with people that are big in the industry, but when you're sitting with them, we all became individuals, we all became human beings that are all trying to learn. If you are about to embark on this beautiful journey that is the MBA, time management becomes a very, very, very important aspect. It's not only just for the MBA, but it's also for your development as a person as well. Going into executive work requires that you manage your time, because you're not only managing finance, you're not only managing HR, but you're also managing all of the departments. So MBA is exactly that. It gives you real life pilot into what that process would look like. And therefore, you're doing all of these modules at the same time. You're doing, I think at the beginning, you do about 13 modules at the same time. So if you can time management, some of the quizzes you can do before coming to class. If you can do some of the assignments prior to class, do your pre-read before you come to class, that will actually lead to better success and better outcomes, because we do have lives outside of the MBA still. We have our families, we have our jobs. KPIs are still there and we need to perform. Therefore, your time management becomes one of the most important things. And if you manage that well, success usually is guaranteed in the MBA. So I'm now embarking on my governance journey, actually looking at coming out of the executive. So I'm doing a fast track process where I'm not staying in the executive program, but going above into being a board member. I think the MBA program has prepared me immensely for that, because I needed to understand the C-suite, you know, the executive side of things, the operations, the strategy, the systems and how they work, before I can actually go and influence policy and changes in the system. So currently I am embarking, I'm part of the IODSA, and I am writing my directorship exam very soon. So the program has actually made that process has been very easy for me. People are panicking about the exam, and the only thing that was a worry to me was actually the financial cost of the program. So it's nice to be able to walk into my next step without panic and having the confidence, because Stellenbosch has actually equipped me with all the information and the qualities and skills I need to be able to move forward. So prior to the MBA, I was able to do a lot of things. And I would say, if I can give it a take, I was operating within systems, right? So knowing different skills, knowing different departments, and really operating within systems. But then you understand that there's also the running of the systems. But what the MBA does, and it unlocks, it's the impact of being able to design the system. So bringing in the integration of all the different skills that I've collected over time, being able to integrate them such that it becomes a benefit to the patients. Most of the time in healthcare, we look at patients receiving care and not look at the experience behind it. We don't look at the access behind it. We don't look at the cost behind it. So all of these things are things that we need to be thinking about when we speak about value to the patient. And that's what the MBA has actually afforded me, being able to unlock how to integrate all the different functions such that they bring value and they benefit the patients and the healthcare industry at large.